What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Opening Tee podcast. Man, what a week it was. I got to be honest, it was probably one of the most up and down roller coaster weeks on a Sunday that I've been a part of for a little while. Not going to lie, and we'll get into that as the Opening Tee, as I mentioned, Opening Tee podcast, part of the Awesome Golf podcast series. Every week I do 2 short form podcasts where I give you all the information you need to know about last week. That's in this podcast, of course. And then I give you a preview of what's to come in the week ahead, partly in this one and then in tomorrow night's Shot Free from the Tee podcast. So hopefully you like the idea and you like the format of these because I enjoy doing them and enjoy recapping every week. So without further ado, excuse me, got a little bit of a cough, I guess. Let's go ahead and look at the foursome of facts from last week. That's how I always start off the Opening Tee pod for this one, for the Waste Management Phoenix Open here. All right, so it was a day for Aussie golf, and crazy, on Australia Day, both tours saw an Australian win. On the European side, Lucas Herbert, a guy that was questioning whether he wanted to play professional golf not just 2 months ago, now finds himself winning over $1 million, winning out in the Dubai Desert Classic, fending off a great round from Christian Benzenhuten, who shot, I believe, 5 or 6 under to get into that playoff with Lucas. So Lucas just really prevailed. Driving distance certainly prevailed there as well. That's pretty much what he's known for. Fleetwood and DeChambeau, terrible Sundays, as well as Eddie Pepperell. Just awful Sundays. Fleetwood ended up outside the top 10. DeChambeau, I think, was in 10th, so brutal there. So there's my first point, European point. And, of course, on the Australian side, on Australia Day, we talked about Herbert, and then, of course, Mark Leishman winning. The Farmers nailed down the Australian duo, so pretty great day for Australian golf. Cam Champ just couldn't avoid the bogeys, but I wanted to bring up him because he scored 7th in DraftKings points and finished well outside the top 10, had more points than even Tony Finau, who came for a tie for 6th. So just want to always bring up little stats like that I saw and that I think were important and something to take note of. Another thing to take note of, maybe this is more on the betting side and maybe for DraftKings purposes a little bit, although for DraftKings he still ended up putting up a lot of points, so it really wouldn't have worked to fade him there. But maybe on the betting side, take a look at it, as Jon Rahm is, I think the graphic was now 0 for 5 in converting 54-hole leads on the PGA Tour. So very interesting. Don't know what's going on there. Last point I want to make about Mark Leishman. When Leishman putts in these mid-scoring events, these minus 12, 13, 14 winners, he is so dangerous. I mean, this guy, he just got off to a hot start, birdied 3 of the first 4. And then he practically did nothing after he got onto the back 9. He got that 4-stroke lead, and he never gave it up. He just made par putt after par putt, finally missing one on 17, but he got it right back on 18. Just an overall great performance from Mark Leishman. So those are our foursome of facts from last week as we move into our second section, my high and low for the week. So to be honest, my core that I give out, of course, is part of the winning element, part of the Osmo Plus membership for everybody on that side. My core was very good. However, Sepp Straka was the one bad one, and also my lineup building in the $400, which is the big contest for me right now on DraftKings. I'm all for, let's see, we're in week 4, Tournament of Champions, so on. So I'm on a now 3-week a 3-week stretch here where, because I did cash one of the lineups at the Tournament of Champions. So I'm on a 3-week stretch where I put in one lineup, and I haven't even come close to the cash line. This week it was Gary Woodland and Lanto Griffin missing the cut for me. So I'm going to totally blow it up for this week just for my single entry, the $444. I'm probably going to go all-stars and scrubs because my balance building has not worked for it. So I'm going to change it up for there. However, my GPP was actually rather good. I was profitable on both sites on GPP this week. Again, it didn't pay the bills. However, I was in 10th going into Sunday in the big $5 on DraftKings before falling all the way to like 61st or somewhere in the top 70. Again, not enough to pay the bills for the whole week, but at least positive for those events. Okay, so let's move on to the not your average missed cut segment, or the cut sweat segment. And these stories that come out of this, you really can't make them up. And I didn't even really have to dig that deep to find these ones. But let's start with DJ Trahan. DJ Trahan birdied 4 straight, 14 to 17, to get to -1, which ended up, of course, being the cut line, being the number, only to double the 18th hole. He did all that work to throw it all away. Roy Sabatini shot 40 on the back nine, so he needed a 32. So he shot 40 on the back nine, which was his front nine. He started on 10. I always like to clarify for myself, not for you guys, just to clarify for myself here. So he needed 32 on the back, but lipped out his birdie putt on 18 to miss by 1. Speaking of lipping out birdie putts, Fowler and Schauffele, man, they just could not get to the -1 number. Both of them had many of opportunities. Fowler missed 2 inside of 10 feet on the last couple of holes. Schauffele was in great position on 2 of the last 3 holes and failed to convert the up and downs. So just terrible miscuts right on the number for Fowler and Schauffele, both in the field this week. Nick Watney, this one is amazing. He lost 5.5 strokes putting in his 1 round at the South Course, and he missed the cut by 5. Just unbelievable. Scott Brown lost 4, missing the cut by 4. Austin Cook lost 2.5, missing the cut by 2. But maybe none of those, or all of those, pale in comparison to Francesco Molinari. Francesco shot 7 over on day 1, getting it all the way back to 1 over at one point on day 2, only to go back-to-back 3 putts. He lost 2.5 strokes putting, and missed the cut by 2. So just some great stuff. Now, on the flip side of that, Kyle Stanley, in his 1 round, gained almost 4 strokes putting on the South Course. So maybe that's some good signs heading into this week. Obviously, we know he's a great ball striker, so that must have not been very good. He missed on the number. And Ted Potter gained almost 3 strokes, but missed the cut as well. Ted Potter's been around for a little bit this year, so maybe he's coming to his end. Okay, so those are the cuts, or the cut sweat segment. So let's head into our statistical review from last week, and this is where we like to see if we can highlight any players that are playing very well off the tee, or on their approaches, or with the putter. So let's start with, in what I do here in the statistical review is I take a new metric, a strokes gained metric, and compare it to a traditional standard method of one of the specific stats that we're looking at. So I like to look at top strokes gained off the tee, which is really measured by distance, of course, and of course position to fairway. And I like to match that up with driving accuracy to see if anybody is hitting more fairways and gaining those strokes off the tee. And this week, sad to say, there was absolutely no crossover between the top 10. Cameron Champ led the strokes gained off the tee, no surprise, with Will Gordon, Bubba Watson, Grayson Murray, and Johnny Vegas as the top 5. As we switch over to driving accuracy, it was Morikawa, Joseph Bramlett, John Haw, Cam Percy, and Kevin Streelman this week. Again, none of those in either side in the top 5. Okay, when we go into strokes gained on the approach and greens in regulation, starting with strokes gained on the approach, Cam Percy was very good in his 3 rounds at the South Course, getting almost 2.5 strokes per round. Then we got Tom Hoagie, Rory McIlroy, Patrick Reed, Mark Leishman, Bubba Watson, Doc Redman, Tiger Woods, Harris English, and J.J. Spawn, which now we'll see some crossover to the greens in regulation. Will Gordon actually led that category, but he was not in the strokes gained approach. However, McIlroy was. Let's see. Watson was in there as well. Hostler, Higgs, Champ, Knox, Morikawa, and Reed were the remaining guys in the greens and regulation category in the top 10. So about a 40% crossover there, which is nice to see. And these strokes gained putting to putts per GIR, a ton of crossover here, which is obviously no surprise. Leishman on the strokes gained putting, Leishman, Rahm, Patrick Rogers, Russell Knox, and Brandt Snedeker. And the putts per GIR, Rahm, Reed, Sneds, and Leishman. So no surprise to see there. All right, I think that does it for our review of last week. We're at about 10 minutes. You know what? I'll do a quick little birdie review. So these are guys that maybe we'd take a look at this week that are just making points, right? One of those guys, Charlie Hoffman. So Charlie Hoffman tied with Mark Leishman, Rory McIlroy, and J.B. Holmes with 21 birdies. Brandt Snedeker and Ryan Palmer were the only two with 20. Then John Rahm, who also had 2 eagles, along with Cameron Champ, who also had 2 eagles. Both of them had 19 birdies, plus those 2 eagles, so that really brings them to 21. If you want to be honest, it's out at birdie or better. So Rahm and Champ both up there. And then Reed was the other guy, 19 birdies and 1 eagle. So plenty of scoring to go around. And actually, you know what? I forgot. I skipped over worst putters. So let's talk about the putters that just could not find anything and likely missed the cut or at least came close to it because of it. Nick Watney, Sebastian Munoz, Bo Hogg, Trey Mullinax, Byung-Hyun Ahn, who are the 2 worst that actually made the cut. And Dominic Bazzelli, along with Dylan Fratelli, to map out the worst putters of the week. Maybe bounce back, especially for Bazzelli, who's a great putter, maybe a bounce back week coming for him. As we move into the waste management, that's a nice little transition there, and we learn about TPC Scottsdale, where the players are heading to this week. A really great tournament, the greatest show on turf. Waste management does a fantastic job in the TPC Scottsdale staff of getting this tournament ready for the most visited tournament of the entire year. Probably somewhere close to 250,000 fans will run through it on the 4 days. And that 16th hole is the most exciting hole in golf. And I'll be honest with you, the 17th hole is turning into be quite an exciting hole as well. They're building many more stands there. It's a drivable par 4 with water to the left. I mean, just such a great hole if you don't know it well. So those 2 stretches provide some fireworks. Plus, there's a par 5, 15th right before those 2. So a really great stretch of holes. Always nice to have that defining characteristic in a course, which is a par 71 measuring right around 7,200 yards. So on the shorter track, plus it's out in the desert, so the ball will go a little bit further. So really does not play long at all. Par 3s, though, a little bit of beef to them. 183, 215, 192. And then that 16th plays around 150, 160 yards. Par 4s, we're going to need 425 to 450 this week, as you're going to see a lot of them there. 403, 442, 470, 432, 475, 450, 430, 450, 450, 332, 490, and 442. I didn't have those in the exact right order. I apologize. And then the par 5s, all of them are 550 yards, all 3 of them. So definitely an opportunity for most of the golfers in the field to get there with a good drive. Speaking of the field this week, so the field starts off with, as normal, winners of last events. Excuse me. Sponsor exemptions, money exemptions, but the big one this week, of course, that I wanted to talk about is the major medical category. So, if you're not following the PGA Tour on an average basis or a weekly basis, you may not know about this major medical extension. And what it is if a golfer gets hurt in their season, whenever it is, the PGA Tour grants them what's called this major medical extension. It allows them to come back, and they have a certain amount of starts, I believe it's 6 within this major medical, where they have to get enough FedEx Cup points to equal that of the number 125 guy of the previous year. If they do that, they're able to retain their card and go back to playing a full schedule in any schedule they want as a full card-carrying member. However, if they don't, they could find themselves having to go back to the Korn Ferry Tour or playing out of a category that would get them in very few events. So a lot of guys. There's 18 players playing out of that major medical this week. We'll cover a lot of them on tomorrow's Shot 3 from the Tee podcast, but that is a bulk of the field. I mean, we only got 140 guys, and 18 of them are coming from that category, so over 10%. And then the rest, of course, will be filled with top 125 on the FedEx Cup points last year, top 10 in the previous event if they weren't already qualified. Let's see, I don't know if that'll actually come into fruition. Brendan Wu and Will Gordon were on the outside, so looks like everybody in the top 10 likely already had the ability to start next week. Maybe Tom Hoagie didn't, but I think he's had a really good fall, so he's likely in a reshuffle category that gets him up there. That just goes back to then top 125 in ties, top 50 and ties from the Korn Ferry Tour last year. So that covers how you can get into the field. And what is this field made of, you ask? Well, I'm glad you did. 39 of the top 100 in the world are here. I included Matthew Wilf, which I believe with his top 25 at the Farmers will likely move inside that top 100 in the world now with that finish. So that makes 39. Wow. Led off by John Rahm, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele, Webb Simpson, Gary Woodland, Tony Finau, Bryson DeChambeau, Hideki Matsuyama, and Ricky Fowler are the top names. So as you can see, maybe now last week during the Farmers, we had 5 of 10 in the top 10, 5 of the top 10 in the world there to play. This week we only have 3. However, since we have the same amount of golfers inside the top 100, that obviously means there's a little bit deeper of a category rather than maybe strength at the top or top heavy. It's more of a balanced strength coming from this field. A lot of guys in that 30 to 50 ranked range. So definitely a deeper value section field this week. However, we're not going to talk about value sections. We're going to talk about the top 5 prices on the board. Last week, I was 4 for 5 and even got an exact price correct. Excuse me, sorry. So I will try and do my best to match it this week. Then, of course, after I go over these prices, I'm going to go over quickly of the stats that Matt Jones, at Matt Jones TFR on Twitter, and I will be going over tomorrow night. So good, we're at about, just about 17 minutes. So nice and short and sweet here as we gear up for the waste management. Doesn't even look like DraftKings has their contest posted yet. Maybe they just did as I record this, just to see what the field is going to be giving us. Yeah, it looks like they haven't quite posted yet, so we'll give them a little bit of time to see what we're going to be playing for next week. My guess, we're not going to get any type of addition. We'll probably get $100,000 to first for the $5 and $250K to first for the $44 and $440. So who is going to be the first name on the board tomorrow when those salaries are released? It's going to be John Rahm coming off his second place finish. Loves this golf course. He obviously went to school around here, so he will be popular. 11.7K for John Rahm, in my opinion. Justin Thomas is not going to be far behind him, though, even though he's coming after the missed cut. I get him at 11.6K, so I'm going to have them be 100 difference in salary. I think it's close enough. Then I think you're going to see an $1,100 price drop. I think you're going to see Xander Schauffele there. Even though he's coming off the missed cut, he was the highest owned he had been in quite some time. So I suspect Xander Schauffele to be next at 10.5. Then I expect them to throw in Webb Simpson at 10.3. And then Hideki Matsuyama with a former winner here, plus another very, very good finish, high finish. I expect the Hideki Matsuyama to get to 10K this week. So to review, Rahm 11.7, JT 11.6, Xander 10.5, Webb Simpson 10.3, and Hideki at 10 flat. Obviously, plenty more golfers in the field, but that's just my guesses on the top 5 as we move into the stats that we're going to be looking at before I send you guys off. The statistical numbers for this week, I mentioned the par 4s between 425 and 450 this week. We're going to get, just on quick count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. So on 30% of your holes, or 33% if we're going to get semantical, right? And of course 33.333 and extenuating. We're going to get a lot of those this week. So guys that are, which then correlates into proximity. Some of these holes you're going to have to lay up, of course, too on. So I've got proximity from 150 to 175 being really important. Obviously, if you take the average drive somewhere around 270 yards, because like I said, you're going to have to lay up on some of them. You're going to have plenty of shots from that number. Again, 150 to 175. Par 4 efficiency from 425 to 450. And then the last one, which it's a really small sample size, is strokes gained par 71. I don't think I'm going to throw a yardage in there because we just don't see that many par 71s on tour. So I just want to see if there's somebody that excels in a smaller sample size there. It's likely we get some of our similar names, though, to be completely honest, since it is a small sample size. All right, I think that pretty much is a good wrap from last week. I am, like I mentioned, right on that 20-minute mark. If this is your first time joining the Opening Tee podcast, First of all, thank you for joining. I appreciate the listen, and hopefully you enjoyed it. My goal here is to not ramble on. It's to not give you information that isn't usable or what I deem as valuable for the next week coming up. And of course, trying to do our best to make you as much money as we possibly can and giving you the best information. And of course, we've got a bunch of stuff out there now. Even Ben and I are doing a Europe article every week, where this week we hit a 110 to 1 each way. So he was 110 to 1 to win. I'm talking about Audrey Arnoux, if you didn't read the article. He was 110 to 1 to win. He came in third, paying off a nice 20 to 1 top 5, a 10 to 1 top 10, and a 5 to 1 top 20. So a nice payday there. That's a great quick hitter article that we put out each week. I also give out 3 or 4 of my top Euro DFS targets, as I love a Euro DFS sweat. So we've got all of that coming up. Of course, I've made a bunch of changes to my model. The Osmo guys' ownership projections have been incredibly good this year, something in the 90% range the last couple of weeks. And of course, Osmo's projections, I saw him in the top 10 in almost all GPPs again last week. So using his projections and tailoring them to your needs and suiting and fit certainly has been profitable this year for members. So if you're not already one, come on and join. We'd love to have you there in our Slack chat as well. And of course, if you're looking for more, I will be back, like I said, for the Shot 3 for the T podcast with Matt Jones tomorrow evening. So until then, everybody, cheers and have a good rest of your day.